Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Man podcast. My name's Rory Paquette, and you already know that. But you know what? I got to say it because I don't want you to ever think that somebody came in here and, grabbed my stuff. But you know what? My name's Rory Paquette. I am happy as hell to be here. I am very grateful that I get to do this. Folks, I get to do this for a living. That's how awesome my life is. And the only reason I get to do this is because of every one of you fantastic people out there that listen to our episodes. When we went to 5 days, you guys all jumped in and our downloads actually went up per episode. I was afraid you guys were going to have had enough of me and say, you know what? I don't want to listen to this guy 5 days a week. Apparently you do. And I am so grateful for that. I'm going to make sure I keep bringing you powerful, strong men and content and stuff like that here on the show. We got one for you today. I think you're going to like this guy a lot. So before we get into that, I just want to make sure I'm saying thank you. Everything that you're doing out there, the sharing, the subscribing, the liking, the DMs, all the stuff on social media, that's why I get to sit in this seat. So thank you very much for enabling that for me and my family. Now, if you're a friend of the program, and I'm sure you are, then you know what time it is. We got to pay some bills. So, time for me to take a sip of my preferred beverage. Oh my gosh, you guys all know what we're drinking. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Deep, dark, rich, bold, beautiful, just like my wife. They brew a mean bean. They do a great job. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans, which is huge here at Power of Man. And you guys all know that. That's why we support them. Go check them out. Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram and tell them Power of Man sent you. And while you're there, pick up one of their cups. They have a really cool Freedom Hill cup. I went with a bigger one because, I got the IU connection that a lot of you guys know about. And I can put 2 cups of coffee in this bad boy, which is really important. So one more of these and we're going to get going. All right, I'm ready. Got my bulletproof vest on, ready to head into the fray. Got an awesome guy here today. Honestly, if there's a guy tailor made for this podcast, it might be this gentleman. He is, please welcome to the program, husband, father, influence strategist, crusader, and speaker, EksAyn Anderson. How you doing, sir?
Oh, Rory, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. I can't thank you enough. Now, you said it was okay to go ahead and call you X. So is that all right if we do that moving forward?
That's great. I always joke around. My wife calls me X. I'm my wife's ex, and we're still married. Yeah, happily most of the time. So,
That's right. You said earlier it's not real good when your wife's calling you X, but I guess
right.
as long as you know where you stand, you're okay, brother. So you have a program called Dadfluence. You are all about and I got to throw this out there because I loved it. But if the family unit crumbles, then the nation and even civilization is at risk. I would love to hear who EksAyn Anderson is, what brought you to this point, what got you interested in this movement, what got you here, and who are you, brother?
Rory, thanks for that. Well, I want to tell you this. Let me tell you a story, first of all, when I was young, and just to briefly let you know, when I was young, I used to like to draw these trees, and I would draw them with every leaf, every branch, every detail. And I went to school, and I saw how the other children drew trees, and guess how they drew them? With the little 2 lines of the poopy clown. So I would draw them with, every leaf, every vein, dozens of leaves, different, like all the branches. Well, when I saw how other children drew trees, I stopped drawing them the way I used to. I started drawing them the way the other children did. And I got to tell you, when my mom saw this, I found out later that she cried. She really cried. And fast forward a few years, I was at a little league game, and Rory, there's a few ways you can play little league. You can either be good and hit the ball, or if you were pathetic like I was, you just hold the bat out like this, and the ball would hit it, drop. It's called a bunt. I
Right.
had I had one bunt the entire season, but anyway, I'm not here to tell you how bad I was at Little League. There was something that happened after this game. After this game, we went home. My mom complained of a very severe headache, and my dad, he became concerned. This wasn't my mom thing. She didn't get migraines, and eventually my dad was concerned enough because my mom said it was so bad that he said, "I'm going to take mom to the hospital." And I remember standing there, Rory, in the front room of our home, and I gave my mom a hug and I said, "I love you, mom." And they drove away. Well, I was a little concerned. I was 8 years old. I went to one of my we actually just had our uncle that just happened to be visiting us at the time, and he was there. And I went to my uncle and I said, "Is my mom gonna die?" And he said, "No, she's not gonna die. She's gonna be just fine. She probably just has a migraine." And I said, "Well, do you promise she's not gonna die?" And he goes, "I promise she's not gonna die. Like, just relax. You're gonna be okay." And I wanted to believe him, Rory. So I went downstairs. I climbed up on my bed, started reading this book about squirrels. I still remember the book. It was a book about squirrels. Well, I read this book, waited for dad and mom to get home, didn't get home. The next morning, I woke up. I'm a little anxious. I climb off my bunk bed and I walk to the door and outside of my room. And when you open the door to this room, there's kind of a family room that's on the other side. And when I opened the door, I could see my dad on the other side of this family room. But something was different. My mom was not there. Instead, there was a friend and another friend and a neighbor and another neighbor and another neighbor. And it seemed like half the neighborhood was at our house. And as I started walking towards my father, I could see that he had been crying. He had tears on his cheeks. And as I got even closer, my dad was trying not to cry, but he wasn't doing a very good job. He's trying to hold it back. And he gathered the children together. He said words I'll never forget. He said, "I think our mom is going to leave us." And I started putting two and two together. And I started to go into a panic. And I said, Dad, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? We got to say a prayer. We got to do something. What can we do to save mom? What had happened, Rory, is my mom had had a cerebral hemorrhage, meaning a blood vessel in her brain had burst. She was now brain dead at the hospital, being kept alive by a life support system. And I remember 2 days later, we were at the hospital. I could see my mom. She had tubes coming out of her nose. She couldn't breathe because she was brain dead. So the machine was breathing for her. Kind of, you could just see her chest kind of. And there came a time where they needed to take my mom off the life support system. There really was nothing they could do. And when they did, I remember she kind of crinkled up. She turned bluish. And I wanted to give her a kiss, but I was afraid to. So I went and kissed the air, kissed a couple inches from her face, and I walked out. Well, I got to tell you, Rory, my mom died that day. And as an 8-year-old boy, I watched my mom die. And just so you know, I want to let you know when we left, she went from being kind of crinkled up like this to on her own without any help. She kind of opened her eyes on almost like she was coming into a beautiful place. But here's my question for you and for your audience here today is how do you think I draw trees now? Remember, I used and, and the answer is I draw them the way my mom would want me to, the way I see them. And I got to tell you, I'm in this unique position, Rory, to see little tiny things that my mom did, little tiny things. Like she just wanted me to draw trees the way I saw them. And I've got to tell you right now, Rory, I'm sharing my heart with you and your audience in this very moment. Figuratively, I'm drawing trees the way I see them right now. And even though I haven't given my mom a hug in almost 4 decades, there's something that's almost as good as giving your mom a hug, and it's feeling her influence. And so, what I want you to know, and this is a story about my mom, and we're starting a worldwide movement for dads. But what I want you to know, dads and moms and parents, anyone who's listening, is that the little tiny things that you may think don't even matter, I promise you, have more power than you can possibly imagine. Because I know little things my mom did that decades later, they're affecting her grandchildren who she never met. It's going to go on for generations, little things that she did. And so that's one thing I want parents to know is I want them to know that their little choices are really a big deal. Now, the next piece, and I'll just say this quickly right now. Neil Maxwell said this. He said, as parenting declines, the need for policing increases. There will always be a shortage of police if there's a shortage of effective parents. Likewise, there will not be enough prisons if there's not enough good homes. And I want you to think about that. There are problems right now, Rory, that we see in civilization. We see it in our nation. We see corruption. We see violence. We see all kinds of stuff happening. And everybody says, well, let's solve it by let's go hire a bunch of prosecutors, or let's go get a bunch of policemen, or let's build more prisons. Let's solve it with government. Government can fix everything. And I'm not saying, by the way, government can do a lot of good things. I'm not criticizing government, but here's the problem. Without strong homes, Rory, no amount of governmental sandbags can hold back the tsunami that's coming. It will not matter who's in office if we don't have strong families. And we need men throughout the entire world, throughout the entire planet to step up and say, we are drawing a line in the sand. We're going to be there to influence our children for good, because the real problems, the violence and the dishonesty and the corruption we're seeing started decades ago in homes where they didn't teach honesty or the golden rule or how do we treat people. And we're seeing the fruits of that now. So you can hack at the leaves and you can throw some sandbags up, but we need to hack at the root. And we need to realize that if we really want change, really, we need good men like you, like people who are listening here, to step up and say, I am going to be the man that's there for my family. You want to change the world? Learn how to influence your family for good.
Wow, man. Um, Hell yeah. Especially on the end
Thank
there.
you.
It's just wow. Let me offer my condolences about your mom, of course. That had to be a tough thing to go through and also tough to talk about today. Thank you for sharing that with everybody.
No problem.
The I love the conclusion you drew from it though. Your mom has an influence on you. That's how strong of a parent she was, even in that short time, and it goes into your movement even stronger. You know, being able to carry that forward like that. So I'm glad that you have that to lean on. That's awesome.
Thank you, Roy.
It really is. The movement, of course, that you're talking about and that I talk about all the time is fathers stepping up, leading their families. I know that here on our podcast, we've got several tenets we live by, and things that we preach, I guess, for lack of a better word, but again, guidelines that we try to stick within. And the bottom line is, it's our job as fathers to protect, provide for, and lead our families. I think that you're cut from a lot of the same cloth. You may have a little bit of a different way to look at it. You're very, very focused on the father role, which is awesome since that's the role that you've got. Do you have kids yourself?
I do have five.
Five.
I do.
Whoa, five? Wow. Okay. More respect.
Thank you.
That's great. How old? Just out of curiosity, what are you dealing
20
with?
to 7 at the moment.
Between 20 and 7?
Between 20 and 7. Yep.
That's quite the range, brother. Okay. I'm an empty nester myself. All of mine are grown. So they're 32, 24, and 20, about to be 21. But that's something. You still got them as young as 7. Phew,
I do.
that's awesome. Um, so I know this happens with your mom. I know that how you feel. Obviously, made that very clear. What makes you start this movement, though? Because lots of people get upset, lots of people get mad, lots of people get angry. It takes a special kind of somebody, and it takes a special kind of purpose. Something has to shove us into that seat that we take at the head of the class to say, not only am I going to be a part of this movement, but I'm going to go lead one. What brings you to that point, brother? And how do you get there? How do you get to that point where you say, I'm going to lead my own movement. I'm going to crusade for this. I believe in it that much. I'm going to put myself out there.
It's funny because sometimes the things that are strongest are the things that happen in silence and in our quiet moments. A little bit about my background. So my background, I wrote a book about how to sell to businesses, and it was really lucky because there was a Forbes writer who picked up the book, and she was really kind, and she put, this guy used the same principles as in his book to get through to me, a busy CEO of Forbes, and that helped launch me into being able to do some training around the country and this kind of thing. But just last year, Rory, I realized that there are things that are, and it's not just last year, but I had a strong just impression that I need to do something for fathers. Here I'm teaching people how to influence, how to sell to a government or how to sell to a business or how to sell to an association or some sort of organization. I know how to do that. But that's not what we need right now. And last year, in a quiet moment, I knew that I needed to start this movement. Now, some of the things that are coming up for me right now, I'll tell you like this. Like for example, in schools, there are schools right now that think they own our children. Okay. And to those in schools and government who think you own our children, we will defeat you. Like we're not gonna, we're not will not happen. And I'm going to put it bluntly. We as parents are the CEOs of our children's education. This is what I'm trying to say. We as dads, our job, like you said, is to lead, is to provide, is to protect. And protect sometimes comes to spiritual protection, emotional protection. So one of the things that I feel like right now, like we're seeing all of these problems in our society, and people are saying, well, let's get more police, let's get more people to go after them, let's prosecute, let's do this, or let's whatever it is. But they're missing it because the real problem, Rory, is that we needed dads 20, 30 years ago to teach them how to be honest, to hold the line, to inspire their children for good. And so for some reason right now, I feel like it's crucial. We're at a very pivotal moment. We're at a crucial moment, frankly, a dangerous moment, but also not a moment with a lot of opportunity. And we need to, as dads, realize that we are the CEOs of our children's education. Now, let me just tell you what that means. As a CEO, if I'm not, I have a right to fire or hire suppliers within my family organization, right? So if the school is not delivering and teaching my kids principles that are going to help them in life, maybe even teaching harmful things, I have a right to say, sorry, we are going to fire you and get a different school. Now I could go down to a school in another city or another town or across the street or wherever. I could hire maybe I could outsource to a private school or to a public school or to a charter school. Maybe I want to homeschool because I want to do it in house, or maybe I want to have a homeschool co-op where there's a bunch of different families who come and we can kind of share and use strengths to teach our children. Maybe I want to use some YouTube videos or Rumble. I mean, something that, I could, whatever it is, I can hire a violin teacher or a karate teacher or a Chinese tutor or whatever it is I'm going to do. I have to be able to say the buck stops with me and not just say, I'm going to just let the government raise my kids. And we need that attitude that, look, I'm the CEO. The school can help me if it's a good supplier, or if it's not, I have a right to fire it. And I think too many dads are just saying, well, I went to public school, so I just kind of have to check it in. And they're not realizing that they have that ability. And I want to bring that to the forefront. And then I want to be clear on our whole civilization, our nation, Rory, our families depend on it. And I have this because my mom died at a young age. I know how powerful just little things you do each day. And so that's one of the reasons I formed this movement, for I formed the Class for Dadfluence, is to try to teach dads, let's do those little tiny things. Let's be powerful. And let's use the stuff I learned in business. Let's use the stuff I've learned as a dad. Let's use the stuff anybody else has, and let's together help each other and change the trajectory of our nation and civilization.
Love every single thing you just said. Absolutely every single thing you just said. Came to you in a quiet moment. I understand that too. My quiet moment was a little more tumultuous, but I do definitely understand that when it comes to you, it comes to you, and it hits you hard, and you can't walk away from it. And it sounds like that might be a little bit about what happened with you.
Right. That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah. Um, Love that. Now, I know that whenever somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to make a difference," and they start talking about running for office or they start talking about, leading a group, my first advice to them is always a lot of what you're saying here today. It's, you know what? Start at home, fix your home,
Yes.
lead your home, get that straight, then worry about everybody else. If every dad out there simply did that, then I think we'd be well on our way towards the stuff that, you and I talk about on a daily basis. How do you empower dads to to do that if they're not now, especially given all the stuff that's being thrown at them from society. Because let's be honest, any dad who wants to step up and lead is being vilified by the media, on social media, and sometimes even by their own wives. What do you have to say to dads about getting started going down that path?
This is a great question, Rory, and I'm glad you asked. So there's a couple things. There's a couple things we need to realize. Um, First of all, I want to ask you this. How do you know what your great great grandfather did for a living? And I'm not asking to
Yeah,
say anything. And let me ask it rhetorically. I've asked this question to men all over the place. I'm like, do you know what your great great grandfather did for a living? And usually people can't tell me. Now, occasionally I get one or two. They'll be like, oh yeah, my great great grandfather did this or this. But you remember you had eight of them. Okay. You had eight. 16 great great grandparents. So these are your grandparents, grandparents. And I want people who think that they're going to go change the world to realize that the biggest thing you can do is exactly what you suggested, Rory. It's to go home and be a good father. Because let's talk about this. When I ask these people, I'm like, do you care if they had a few more extra square feet on their house? Do you care if they had a really cool horse or do a really cool plow? I mean, is that important to you now? And here's the thing, your great great grandchildren, so going down the other direction, aren't going to care if you had an extra 5 or 6 or 1,000 square feet because you went and hustled on your house. They're not going to care if your car was cool. They're not going to care. But the kind of dad you are in your home is going to go on for centuries. And let me give you one example. Let me give you an example here. I live in the United States of America. Okay. Well, why? I'll tell you, centuries ago, centuries, people, my ancestors, made a family decision that they were going to come to what is now the United States of America. Okay. That decision currently affects the language we're speaking right now.
right.
It would be different if they hadn't made that decision. It affects my economic opportunities. Because I live in the United States, I have different opportunities than if I lived elsewhere. It affects my educational opportunities. It affects my religion. So that decision made in their families hundreds of years ago is affecting me, their great, 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 how many greats down and on the grandchildren. And it's affecting my children and it will affect their children. It will go on for a long time. Now, that's a really obvious one because it's geographic. They're like, well, they got on a boat and they came across the ocean and now they're here. But just as real, not as obvious, but just as real. What kind of a parent were they? Did they care? Were they checked in? Were they kind? Were they angry? Were they drunk? Were they whatever it is that they were? A lot of times that can get passed down in ways we can't even see. And so when you have a choice, let me give you one more example. McKinsey did a study and they found that most businesses in the S&P 500, these are big fat businesses, S&P 500, big businesses, aren't going to last more than 18 years. Okay? So 18 years. Most businesses don't even last a year or two, maybe three if they're good. But even if you're big, 18 years. So if you and I, Rory, go out and we say, hey, we're going to go change the world and we're going to make a business, the chances are in a decade or two, that business is going to be bought, sold, bankrupted, disrupted. It's not even going to be around. But if I go home and and I play with my kids and I teach them principles about honesty, principles about how we treat people, how do I treat my wife? How do I treat people when I'm angry? Why do it's important to be honest and have integrity? Those little conversations, just like my mom wanted me to draw trees the way I see them, can go down for centuries. So it's not just like, hey, start with your family. I'm telling you, your family is going to outlast anything you do in the business world. I mean, hands down.
Right.
So what I want people to know is like, if you want to make a difference in the world, dude, go home, play chess with your kids, go on some road trips, talk about things that are important, spend time, do something teach these principles and that's important. So great question, Rory. Thank you.
Such a great point too, especially about the business, because I think that when we're men and we think about legacy, we think about business, we think about money, we think about things. that we leave behind, an inheritance or life insurance or accumulated items. We rarely think about the influence that we have as fathers and the impact that we have that then carries on because we've changed how they are as people. And I think that just gets undersold a ton.
Totally. Yeah. People say legacy. They're like, oh, am I going to leave my kids a bunch of money? That's not the important thing. The money
Oh,
will dry up probably shortly after you die, right?
right.
But the legacy, the principles you taught, how you taught them to be honest, or how you taught them to treat others, or how you taught them to work hard, those things, or be confident, those things will go on for generations. Way, way, way more valuable than how much money you have in your bank account when you die.
Love it. Absolutely love that. Um, okay. So we've got, um, I love how at I was reading your bio, and one of the things that you said was, we are coming and we will not be stopped.
Yeah.
Um, that's a strong statement. Okay, especially for somebody who has just started his movement, sure, not that long ago.
Yeah.
I love the vigor behind it. Do you know at this point, and it's okay if you don't yet, because it's fairly new and you're moving it up. Do you know where you want to take it?
Yes, Rory. We need good men like yourself. We need good men like the men listening to this podcast. We need men across the world. We are starting a movement to step up worldwide, all across the globe. We are not going to stop until people realize exactly what you've just asked this question about. Should I go scroll on my screen and go try to make another thing happen at work? Or should I, maybe my kid needs a little bit of help right here? We need to have until people realize that the real root of the problem across the globe is that we need good homes. We're not done and we are not stopping. It's not politicians, as much good as they can do. And I'm not saying politicians can't do good. They can do a lot of good, but they're not going to, there's some things, Rory, that have to be solved at a different level. There's some things government can't fix. And unless we have strong families, we are just straightening deck chairs on the Titanic. It is going down. If the Titanic's going down, it's nice to have straight deck chairs, but you've got to stop the plug. And the problem, the root of the problems we're seeing is homes that are not delivering kids who know how have good principles and can and know right from wrong and know what to do. And so, yeah, no, you're right. Until everybody knows that that's the problem, we are not stopping.
Love it. Love the attitude. Oh, absolutely.
So glad, by the way, can I say something, Rory? What you're
Yeah,
doing on your podcast, this is exactly men like you who are making a change, who are trying to get voices out, who are trying to inspire. It's like such a great thing you are doing. You're already leading this movement. So I'm in effect joining your movement. Does that make sense?
I
It's
appreciate
our
that.
movement where we're going to try to help dads. So thank you for being a leader in this movement.
Thank you. Thank you. And to you as well. I do appreciate that. I think that's an important thing also. Maybe we should touch on that for a second since you brought that up. People look at the different men who are leading movements who are out there trying to get men mobilized, trying to spread this idea that men need to step up and lead and take accountability for themselves and their families. And they think that we're all competing with one another. And I don't think that they really understand that there is no competition. You
No
know,
competition.
some men are going to
Boy,
listen to me, some are going to, connect with you, some will connect with the other guy over there that's doing the same thing we are. What we need is not fewer men and less competition. What we need is more men bringing their people into the fold and everybody working together. We need more voices, not
it,
fewer.
it, it doesn't matter who gets the credit on this. What
Right.
matters is that people understand it. We need good men like you and anyone listening to this podcast who will join. And we're not trying to build names. We're trying to help save civilization for our children. Because the truth is, Rory, at some point, you and I are going to die. And at that point, whatever we've taught our kids and the world we've left for our kids is going to be the world we've left for our kids. I don't care if it's somebody out there. I don't care if it's you or if it's me or anybody else who goes down this movement. The point is, at some point, I probably have 20, 30, 40 years left at the most. And 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 when I die, that's the world that I've left. And what I'm seeing right now is if I don't take a stand, if I don't say something to try to change things, my children will know. But if I do try to do something, my children will know. So for me, this is more about knowing what I know I need to do from the quiet moment that we had. Maybe we understand that, but also just knowing that we need to, for our kids' sake. And we all know we don't care who gets the credit. We care that our kids have a good life. So this is more about our children and our children's children than it is about us.
Right.
We can step our egos out of the way.
Now, did I see that you have a podcast as well?
I do. I do. I have a podcast. It's called the Principal Podcast. It was recently listed as top 10% globally, but I don't, and we talk about some of the same things.
Mhm.
I don't have as great a voice as you do. Gosh, you got the best voice for a podcast, so Rory. It's amazing.
Thank you
But
for that. I
we talk
appreciate it.
about some of the same things. But wherever we can find good men, any men who are listening to this, who can join our movement to help, to just go home and love your children, tell other people to get involved, tell people that you are the CEOs, tell people that how important it is to teach principles and honesty and the golden rule to your children. That's what we need.
No, I love that. I'm definitely going to put a link to your podcast in the show notes because, hey, people need more voices, not fewer. So I want them to hear that. Now, you also offer help for dads who are trying to, kind of turn this corner in the way of a course, some training, right?
I do. So we put together a 7 week system. And what I've tried to do is take the very best things that I learned in the business world. I've had some success in some sales related areas. And I thought, when we're trying to influence our children, a lot of times dads wait. They wait until there's a crisis, or a mom waits until there's a crisis. They say, okay, my kid's now on drugs, or my kid just got put in jail, or they're thinking about doing the unthinkable. They're thinking about suicide or something. And then they get really concerned. But the best time to work on these problems is before they even have a chance to start. And those are in those little tiny daily interactions. So, how do you influence your child to be confident? Like I said, we're all going to die. We want our children to. The truth is, Rory, we want to work ourselves out of a job to where our kids are so awesome they don't need us, right? That we
Right.
want to not be needed. A good dad wants to say, "I want you to be so awesome, you don't need me."
Right.
And how do I do that? How do I make it so that I can have them confident and doing good in the world and feel like they can do things and not wait until there's a crisis to finally start learning about this. Like, let's learn it before the crisis starts, years before. And that's what I'm trying to help dads do is how can I influence my children for good? And the sooner you get started, the better. And if you haven't got started, the sooner you get started, the better still applies.
No, I love that. I heard that said that as fathers, our goal in life is to take the people that we uh, can't possibly live without and teach them how to live without us. And it's like when you're an empty nester
That's
already,
you just nailed it right
mm,
there. You just nailed it right there.
just breaks your heart wide open. It's awful. Um, but that's exactly what
Yes.
we're doing. It's exactly what we're doing is we're teaching all these people that we love more than anything in the whole world how to live without us and function and be productive and be positive and lead legacies of their own, out there. So, it's not that easy. Your course helps people do that, I assume. Now you help them get started. You help them. Can you tell us anything about like action steps that are in the course? No, I don't want you to give away the secret sauce or anything. I mean, people
Well,
still
no,
have to
and
check it
and
out.
and
But
the truth is, right now, I'm giving for your guests right now. They can get the course for free. They put in the word family at dadfluence.org gift. They can get it for free. I've got opened up 10,000 coupons, and as soon as those are until they're gone, you can get it for free
wow.
on that family. Let me tell you, um, one of the things. Let me give you an example of how you influence. Now, a
Sure.
lot of as dads, sometimes we have the temptation to be really negative. Now, I'm not saying you can't call out things that your kids need to work on. Absolutely, as a dad, that's one of our jobs. But sometimes, let me tell you one of the principles of influence that a lot of dads maybe could think about. Psychologically, they found that behaviors are like seeds. So, like a seed you would plant in the ground, like a corn seed or an apple seed or something. And attention is like water. So, if I want a behavior in my children to get bigger, I water that behavior with attention. They crave attention, even if it's negative. And so here's the problem. What happens is sometimes dads will walk in and they'll say, I can't believe you didn't make your bed. And I can't believe you're getting a C minus in math. And you didn't, you stayed up too late last night. And what that dad is inadvertently doing is they're literally watering the seeds, the weeds. They're watering the stuff they don't want to see get bigger. They're watering, and without consciously knowing it, they're probably making it more likely that the kid will sleep in. One of the best things we can do as dads is be really start to key in what our children are doing right. So there's a great book. Every dad should read this. I didn't write it. It's called The Power of Positive Parenting by Glenn Latham. Super good book. Put that in the show notes too, maybe. So, by the way, I don't get any money for referring this. It's just something, a book that I read that changed my life. And he basically said, if you want a behavior to get better, you water it. So let me give you an example. There was a kid who was getting sent to the principal's office all the time. And this kid was getting sent so many times that they called in the school counselor to try to fix the problem. The school counselor sat and watched, and they noticed that this kid was doing a lot of things right. Like he was listening, he was following instructions, but the teacher would give zero attention when the kid did something right. But as soon as the kid did something wrong, the teacher would say, oh, there you go again, and write his name on the board. He'd do something else wrong. He'd get the check mark. He'd do something else. He'd get the other check mark. Do something else. Soon he has enough check marks, they're marching him down. And so he's getting a lot of attention for doing what's wrong. And then they march him down to this office, and the girl at the desk is like, I knew you'd be here, and sits him right next to this window. They found he was getting doubly reinforced. Listen to this. And so when the bell rings, all the kids come out, and he's kind of the cool bad kid. So he's waving through the window because he's in the principal's office again. And the other kids are like, hey. And so they found he was getting a ton of attention for doing what's wrong and not zero attention for doing what's right. And they said, you know what, this is just kind of predictable behavior, right? And so I had learned this principle. And shortly thereafter, I got to tell you, my little 6-year-old daughter, who's now grown, came and knocked on my door. Okay. She knocked on my door at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning. It was early. She knocks on my door, and I open the door into my bedroom, right? And she goes, hey, Dad. I go, hey. She goes, I've got a surprise for you. I said, and she goes, guess what? I made my bed. I made my lunch, and I got dressed, and you didn't even have to ask me. And I thought to myself, wow, this is a behavior I like. I want this behavior to grow. So I went to my wife and I went back and I said, hey, let's try this and let's see if this really works. Let's try. So I went out there and I said, wow, you know what? Your bed looks great. Thank you. It was so great that you did it without having to be asked. You made your lunch, you got dressed. Thank you. And my wife laid it on pretty thick, a lot of attention, right? We're going to water this behavior. Well, guess what happened? It worked. She did it again, right? Um, and and we kept watering it. And so what would have been less effective is wait till she sleeps in, doesn't make her bed, doesn't get ready for school, and then storm into her room and be all angry and say, how many times do I have to tell you to get up and make your bed, blah, 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 blah. That would be less effective. And so when I'm trying to influence my children, it's not to say like if they're doing stuff that's bad, we can obviously talk about it, but I really want to have the like I want to find those things that they're doing well and build on them, build on them, build on them. And that's just one, I mean, that's one of many things that we talk about. How do we influence our children to good? And they found positive reinforcement is the best. It's more effective than punishment. It's more effective than negative reinforcement when you're trying to shape behavior in human beings. And I could tell you stories about how this got me into high-level directors in New York when I'm selling. I mean, it works everywhere, right? But I want to give dads some tools to say, okay, yeah, I know I need to be a good dad, but I kind of don't know what I'm doing. And I'm trying to put some ideas in there that would help them.
Nice. I love the idea. I mean, it seems so simple, and you kind of go, well, yeah, of course. But then when you really think about it, how often are you all doing it? You
Oh
know, and
yeah, and I preach it. And I got to tell you, I still struggle with it sometimes. Like I really
right.
want to go in and just say something negative, and sometimes I blow it. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think that's a big key, is not just to take in the information, but to really look at it in your life and then and do a little review and say, all right, yeah, I like this idea of the positive reinforcement, but am I actually doing it? Did I say good job for something they did, or did I just expect it? and they did it, and I let it go because it didn't piss me off.
Right. And by the way, it would be really weird if you positively reinforced everything. Like if every time they did something good, you said good. You don't
Sure.
have to do that. Like you don't have to be weird about it. You can be, they actually say that being sort of random is actually more effective. Like, so it's not every time. And it's called variable positive reinforcement, which is more effective than just every single, like it'd be weird if they did that. But our kids are begging us to see the good in them. They
Hmm.
just want that attention. And so sometimes if they know they can get mom and dad's attention by spilling the milk on the floor because now finally I get dad's attention, that's you've got to basically train them that they can get attention for doing what's good and right, and that's what you want to do.
Right. No, I love that we're having this talk about fathers and dealing with their, kids and things like that because I think that's huge. I think that's probably the biggest job that we have. But there's a job that's, sort of right underneath that that's also very, very important. That's the job of the husband. And so in the family unit, there is, the role of the mom. And so, in your movement and in things that you talk about, just what you were saying right there, that's something that I try real hard to practice with my wife. Not just saying, "Oh, good
Awesome.
job, honey," all the time, but she takes care of laundry, for instance, in our house. That's like one of her jobs that she does. I do try really hard to make sure that I thank her for doing that. Hey, thanks for doing that. Really appreciate you doing that. And it's not every single time like, I'm being condescending. I'm legitimately saying, hey, I appreciate the fact that I don't have to take care of that one task. And so I make sure that I put that out there. So there is a sort of a what's the word I'm looking for? There's a situation where you have to also apply some of this towards from the husband towards the wife in that dynamic, and in the wife as mother. So what advice do you have for guys on that, um, in terms of because she needs to be able to back up what you're trying to do as a father also.
So is your question like what can you do to help your wife do that, or how that you can actually help your help your marriage?
It's I guess it's sort of twofold. The first part of it, and I'll give you time to answer both. But the first part of it is as you're making this change, let's say you're not leading your family the way you would like, and so you want to step up and lead. Your wife needs to be on board with that,
Right.
right? So how do you get that dynamic handled? And that's the word I was looking for was dynamic. How do you get that dynamic handled? But then also how do you, transfer some of these skills and use some of these tools to get her to be included and to also, step up in her own way, kind of lead the kids.
These are super good questions, and I love that you asked them. So I'm going to answer it in a little bit of a long way. Okay. And here's
Whatever you
here's
got
where
to
I'm going with
do.
it. So I had a friend named Daniel. Daniel was accepted to Stanford um, some time ago. He was accepted to Stanford's business school, which is NBA. Now, one time I said this and somebody thought I said NBA, which is National Basketball Association. I'm not talking about Masters of Business. And it's kind of a big deal. If you go to Stanford, they say that the average Stanford MBA makes about, when I looked at this several years ago, it was like 285,000 a year. Whereas the average American household is making about 55. So that's about $230,000 more. And that's only in year five after they graduate. Well, if you make $230,000 more than the next person and you do it for 30 years, that's $6.9 million. Now you might wonder where I'm going with this, but bear with me for a second here. There's a good chance that Daniel, because of that, would make at least $6.9 million more than the next person. And that 6.9 million is really, really low because I'll tell you why. I didn't include inflation numbers in there. I didn't include that people generally do more and better as they make more in their career. But I went to Daniel and I said, "Hey, Daniel, what did you do to get accepted to Stanford?" And this is what he told me. He said, "Well, my dad taught me that if I didn't understand something, I had to look it up." And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, $6.9 million, probably way more than that. Look stuff up. And he's like, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Tell me more." And he goes, "Well, it goes, it's almost like it would almost always happen when I was reading a book for school. I'd be reading this book and I'd get to a word I didn't understand and I'd have to go look it up in the dictionary. And then I knew what the word said, and so you know, I knew what it said, and I came back. But the real magic happened is I'd hear that same word in TV or on the radio, And because I'd taken a few minutes to look it up, I now knew what they were talking about. Okay. And I thought about this and I said, okay, $6.9 million, look stuff up. I said, Daniel, was there anything else you did? And he looked at me kind of funny. He said, well, I mean, sometimes I had to look stuff up in the encyclopedia. In his mind, really, the reason he went to Stanford is because his dad asked him to look stuff up in the dictionary. Well, I thought about this for several years. I went back to him later and I said, Daniel, how much time did you spend looking stuff up in the dictionary? Be honest with me. And he goes, it wasn't that long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And I said, 5 or 10 minutes, that's it? He's like, well, maybe 15. I go, what was it on a bad day? And he said, maybe 30 minutes. Well, in his mind, he really just spent 5 or 10 minutes a day looking stuff up in the dictionary, and that made the difference for him going to Stanford. Well, I went home and I did some math for him. I went home and I took all the time he was in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, all the way through junior high, middle school, all the way through high school. I took the worst case scenario and used a half an hour, not 5 minutes. I used a half an hour, and I divided that into $6.9 million. How much money do you think Daniel was making as a third grader looking stuff up in the dictionary, like per hour? Well, I'll tell you
Can't
this.
even imagine. Yeah.
It was close to $2,200 an hour. So, and here's why I tell the story. I'm asking, like, why do you think I'm telling you this story? And the reason I'm telling you this is because these little things that he did, like just I'm going to take 5 minutes to look it up in the dictionary. People, if I told you, hey, you've got to look stuff up in the dictionary, most people would be like, yeah, that's true, I should. But you don't realize it might make you $6.9 million if you do it consistently. If I say, hey, you should, if you don't understand something, go look it up in the encyclopedia. You're like, yeah, I should, yeah, sure. You don't realize that literally it was life changing for Daniel. And here's what I'm going to say about family life and going back to your question. You may not think that your little tiny daily decisions matter, but I'm telling you, your little tiny daily decisions are everything. So when you have these, one of the things we do in our family is every day, we go and study principles. Okay. And we do it in a religious context, but we study them and we talk about them and we talk about why it's important. And in this discussion, I'm talking to my children and I'm also talking to my wife. We're talking about why we do it, right? And the best thing you can do, like one of the things that men make, we're going down here. If you can have a daily time where you and your wife have some kind of something together, whether that's prayer, whether it's a religious, whether it's studying, whether it's something where you can talk about it. Now, here's the kicker. You got to do it when emotions are low. People oftentimes try to
Mm.
figure stuff out when they're heated and they're like, well, you always and you never, and then blah, 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 they just start talking. And what you got to do is wait for the emotion to be down. So it's like you and I are talking right now. It's boardroom talk. Like, how do we solve this problem? And if you can solve your problems when the emotion is low, you do really well. I'm going to give you another resource. There's a lady named Tamara Fackrell. She is unbelievable. I just want to tell you this. She has a PhD in marriage and family, but she's also a divorce attorney. Think about that. Like, how different are those two? She's literally seen everything that people fight about in divorces, and she's come up with a program to help people with their marriages. And she has a course on Teachable, I think it is, but she's genius. And in fact, I personally think she's better than like a marriage counselor. She's got so many ways. Like, how can you solve these problems? So you and your wife see things differently. Go take one of those courses from Tamara Fackrell. And again, I'm not affiliated with her. Don't get anything for talking about it. I'm just saying she has been a huge resource and a blessing in my marriage. And so a short answer would be do it when it's slow and then have daily talks when you're rested. Don't do it late at night when you're tired. Maybe you do it in the mornings real early, or maybe you do it during the middle of the day. Have a little bit of time where you can talk when things are calm. And if you do that daily, you'll find that things can over time change. It's not a quick fix, but it's a worthwhile fix.
Brother, I knew you were going somewhere with that, and that ended up
Sorry.
being a fantastic answer. You pulled that thing home with both hands, but man, that was awesome. I really did like it. So thank you for that one. I appreciate it. And it wasn't the easiest question in the world. So I appreciate you fielding it like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I do have one more question. I'm gonna go ahead and give you absolute green light to say, hey, it's not something I want to talk about. But you just brought it up. and I've wondered through this whole process. We're a fairly Christ-centric podcast. I talk about my belief all the time. And you just mentioned, some religious, activity and things like that. I just
Yeah,
wonder, and if you want to talk about it, you can. If you don't, that's perfectly all right. I respect your right to not. But has your own personal faith played a role in this movement and in your desire to help other men do this?
absolutely. In fact, I think if we try to take God out of everything, it's not going to work. The truth is, there's a wise man who said this, the world works from the outside in. They want to change the environment so we can change people. But Christ works from the inside out, changes men who then change their environment. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And I think that it's okay to talk about our belief in God. It's okay to tell people, I believe in Jesus Christ. It's okay to say, we want to become it because the truth is, Jesus Christ is the perfect example of how we should be, right? I mean, look at the stuff he says, I think about this a lot, Jesus Christ comes to earth and in his first sermon, I'm like, what was in his first sermon? Okay. Because he comes to earth and we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate these things, but then he comes and his first sermon's in Matthew 5 through 7. It's called the Sermon on the Mount, right? And he says stuff that's really difficult to do. Like he says stuff like, don't be angry, right? He says stuff like, cast the mote out of your own eye first. Well, think about that. How easy is it to say, hey, it's my wife's problem. It's my boss's problem. It's their problem. It's that political party's problem. It's somebody else's problem. And he's saying, I want you to cast the mote out of your own eye first. That's hard stuff to do. But when we actually do it, that makes our families better, right? So you can call it what Jesus said, or Stephen Covey, this author who sold millions of books, he says it the same way. He says, look, when we focus on our circle of influence, what we can control, it grows. When we focus on our circle of concern, it shrinks. Well, that's exactly the same thing Christ said. He just said it a different way. The principle was already there, right?
Right.
And so studying those principles in the Bible, studying those principles in scripture, studying those principles and teaching those to our children, super, super important. Absolutely.
Wonderful. I appreciate you being willing to talk about that and step up. So, and I also appreciate I know that it's a sensitive topic sometimes on various podcasts, and things like that, where sometimes people don't want you talking about that kind of thing. And I actually interviewed a guy, and he mentioned a couple things about just God in passing that really could have been from anybody. And at the end, the host said, I can't use this material because you said the word God." It was like, maybe
They've
that should have
lost.
been in the show notes ahead of time. Maybe we should have had that conversation in the pre-interview, but no, I appreciate you saying that, stepping up, putting that out there. Because in this day and age, I mean, just saying that you're a follower of Christ, I mean, automatically, means that you've got people coming after you. So I applaud your bravery in that way.
Thank you. I'm glad. I'm not ashamed of Jesus Christ. And I hope I can follow him with all my heart. And I
Love it.
sometimes do and sometimes don't.
Absolutely love it. Listen, EksAyn, I appreciate everything you've done here today, everything that you've had to say, all the opinions that you've shared. Offering your course for free is ridiculous and awesome. So I'll make sure we put that out there for folks. I did not expect that at all, but we'll make sure that we guide folks into to find a way to do that. Um, this is a big topic. And so what I want to do is I want to give you the floor for a moment or two, sort of as we close out here. If there's anything that I didn't ask you about, or anything that we didn't bring up that you want to make sure you put a finer point on, maybe even just a final nugget, final thought that you want to leave the listeners with, any of that, the floor is yours for the last minute or two as we close out. Go for it.
Thanks, Rory. I want you to know, and if I haven't said it before, I want you to know that there will come a day. For some of this, with some of our children, it's already come, but there will be a day when our children ask to play with us for the last time, maybe. you mentioned, I do have some younger kids and they want to come play with me. Like, Dad, will you play a game with us? Will you come kick the soccer ball with us? Will you come throw a ball? Will you come play chess or whatever it is? And on that day, no bell's going to ring. There's not going to be an alarm to say, hey, this is the last time. It'll just slip by and we'll only see it looking back. And so all I would say is if we can choose, as hard as it is sometimes, to be present and say, you know what, I can work can wait. Whatever business you're working on is going to be gone in a decade or two, but your children and your grandchildren, all that is not. Put the phone down, step away from the emails, step away from the sports. I mean, turn off the TV and go be there with your kids. That's what the first thing. The second thing I will say is this. I'm a fan of Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey was at a conference and he said this. He said somebody came up to him after the conference and said something that's kind of surprising. This guy goes, I don't love my wife anymore. And that kind of threw him off. He looked at the guy and he said, well, then love her. And the guy said, I don't love her. I've fallen out of love. She's fallen out of love with me. We have 3 kids. We're probably heading for a divorce. And I'm kind of concerned about it. And Stephen Covey looked at the guy and said, my friend, if you're not feeling it, hear this, that would be a good reason to love her. And the guy goes, I just told you I don't love her. I've fallen out of love. She doesn't love me. We don't love each other. And Stephen Covey looked at the guy and said, my friend, love, you're acting like love's a feeling. Love's not a feeling. Love is an action word. It's something you do. It's a verb. But he goes, here's the kicker. If you do the verb, the feeling will follow. Did you hear that? This is a principle that's super, super important. Something we should teach our kids and our family as well. You can lead your feelings with your actions. And so if I'm not feeling love for my wife because I've had a bad day and we've kind of had some arguments or something, whatever's happening, maybe the key isn't to go run off to divorce court because you've married the wrong person. Maybe the key is to go give her a back rub. Maybe the key is to go do the dishes. Maybe the key is to go take the kids so she can have a break. Now, last example, same exact thing. I had this friend named Brody. Brody did this Spartacus workout. He said he hated it. I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with this. He goes, it's like an hour-long workout. He does all kinds of muscle confusion. He goes, I was so sore after I did it. I could barely walk. I hated it. But I committed to do it. So I did it again the next day. Still hated it. I did it again the next day. Still hated it. Did it again. Wanted to die. Hated it, hated it, hated it. He goes, but I kept doing it because I'd committed to do it. He goes, it was really interesting. For 2.5 weeks, I hated this. But he goes, something around 2.5 week or 2.5 week or 3, because I kept doing it, even though I hated it. Something changed. I said, do you remember the day? And he goes, I don't, but it was right around week 2.5 or 3. He goes, I got to the end of the workout this day, this one particular day. And for the first time, I felt like I was just getting started. Like I literally wanted to do the workout again. So that day I did it twice and I liked it. Happened again the next day. I got to the end of the workout and instead of hating it, I loved it. I wanted to do it again. And he said, you see, he had to work out for 2.5 or 3 weeks before he felt like it. And can you imagine saying, well, I'm not going to work out until the feeling just kind of flies in the window and hits me in the head? I mean, you got to work out before you feel like it. And you got to love your spouse before you feel like it. Some days you don't feel like it. And you got to be present with your kids when you're not feeling like it. And guess what happens? If you do it long enough, the feeling follows. And now you've got these powerful principles working for you instead of against you. So, that would be my final 3 thoughts. You gave me room for one, and I took 3. Thank you, Rory, for letting me share.
That was worth every minute, man. That was some very powerful stuff to end on. I appreciate that. Um, Thank you, brother, for coming on and sharing all this. Talking about your own personal story, just being as authentic and transparent as you have been. I'm sure that there's people out there who heard what you had to say and were nodding right along with me while you were laying it out. So I love what you're doing, and I wish you all the power in the world putting this movement together, man. And if you ever need anything from me, I'll be there to help you out. I love it.
I'll say this, Rory, in some ways, I want to thank you. You're doing such a great job with what you're doing, trying to help and inspire men. I'm joining your movement. And I want you to know it doesn't matter whose movement it is. What we need to do is just make the world better, as good as we can in the short time we have left so that our kids can have something good.
Beautiful.
And and who cares who leads it as long as it gets done.
Right. Right on. Right on. Once again, uh, EksAyn Anderson, Dadfluence, the course, the movement. Sir, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. Had a fantastic time talking to you.
Rory, thank you. Appreciate it.
Folks, the reason that we do this, and I end this way all the time, the reason that we do this, that we bring on powerful men like this talking about really powerful topics, is because you are worth it, because you deserve it, and because you matter. And you men out there that are listening to this right now, I know you're used to giving of yourselves and sacrificing and everything else. At some point, you're going to have to realize the power that you have. You're going to have to realize that you can, in fact, step up. You can protect. You can provide for. You can lead your families exactly where you want them to go and exactly where you want to take them because you have that power in you and because you matter. All that needs to happen is you have to believe it. Until next time.